All right, class, let's get going with Unit 4. Our topic is Early Modern Era, Global Interactions, 1450 to 1750. Our central question, how did global interaction begin to spread culture around the world? So we're going to talk mostly during this conversation in our boards about major European developments. The Renaissance. The Renaissance came about because of the end of the Black Death, increase in population, people demanded more goods, and this increased trade. There was a focus on humanism or a focus on individuals. The Medici family in Florence ruled Florence, had a lot of extra money. They were bankers, and they were patrons to the art with the likes of Michelangelo, Brunelleschi, Leonardo da Vinci, Donatello, names that we're all pretty familiar with pertaining to the Renaissance. The Renaissance began and spread from northern Italy. Now the church notices the developments in the arts and employs the great artists for the likes of the Sistine Chapel, St. Peter's Basilica, and other great works that you can still obviously go, on tours or whatever in Rome to see to this day. Now the Italian Renaissance then moved north, Northern Renaissance, Germany and Netherlands. The Renaissance brought back Roman and Greek classics that influenced all of the arts. So obviously we have, some of the great works like the Sistine Chapel and other, but these were all just a small part of all of the arts that were influenced by the Renaissance. Now, Western writing, Johann Gutenberg creates the movable type printing press, 1439. This was in Germany. Books are mass produced. People sharing ideas become much more educated. In 1517, Machiavelli prints The Prince. It's the first document on how to rule. So Machiavelli's writing emphasized the need for a prince to be a very strong, wise prince, not necessarily a very good in meaning like believable and peaceful, meaning that you need to be a good prince, you got to be harsh, you got to, set the law. So Machiavelli writes this in 1517 and is the first mass-produced document on political affairs. Erasmus, Sir Thomas More, Shakespeare, all influenced on Western civilization. Now the Protestant Reformation comes about. The Catholic Church had too much power in the 1500s, and a lot of that came from the sale of indulgences. So the church, to pay for all of these great artists to do their great works, the Pope decides to sell indulgences. What are indulgences? Well, if I wanted a little certificate saying I was going to go to heaven, I just have to walk up to the church, pay him $50, and then boom, I got my indulgence and I'm going to heaven. Well, some people didn't believe in these things. Whoops. One of those people was, sorry, that's out of order, the monk Martin Luther. So, Martin Luther nails the 95 Theses to the door of the German church. Luther felt very strongly against the sale of indulgences and the corruption of the church. Basically said church was corrupt and the church was not needed to find salvation. Now, Pope Leo X, who was the Pope at the time, was outraged at Martin Luther's ideas. He called the Diet of Worms, which was just a big meeting in Germany it was kind of like a court case to see if Martin Luther was guilty of any kind of heresy against the church, and eventually called for his arrest. Martin Luther goes into hiding in Germany, into a prince's, like his attic or whatever at that time for more than a year. He translates the Bible from Latin to German so normal people could have the Bible to read. And he begins the Lutheran Protestant movement. Now, out of this also came more splits, like Calvinism in Switzerland. King Henry VIII wanted to divorce his wife. The Pope said no, so he creates his own Anglican church called the Church of England. So the Catholic Church has this counter-reformation, or the Catholic Church reforms itself. sets about with the Council of Trent in 1545 to 63, defining Catholic doctrine. And make no mistake about it, there were very Catholic countries of Italy, France, Spain. They were mostly Catholic. The areas of England, because of the Church of England, and a lot of places in Germany became much more Protestant. Now, the Jesuits are formed under this Catholic Reformation, followers of Ignatius Loyola, who follow a high moral code. Learning, education is some of their precepts. So I did put this board up. This is the board that I had just a second ago. It gives kind of an idea of the evolution of Christianity. So Christianity becomes a legal, and at this, from 30 to 300, the Christians were often persecuted, and we've kind of reviewed this. But Christianity becomes legal from the Edict of Milan, 1313. Catholicism becomes the Roman Empire's #1 religion in 380. Now in 1054 you had the Great Schism. So you had this aspect of Catholic believers that followed Rome and a pope from Rome, on this side. And then on this side you have Orthodox who follow a pope that actually lived in Constantinople. So in 1054 you had this Great Schism. So over on this side, the western side, you had the Catholics who followed in Rome, and then of course you had the Protestant Reformation in 1520, Lutherans, Anglican Church, Calvinism, but you also had the Catholics that reformed under the Council of Trent, 1545 to 63, Catholics of modern day. Now, under the Protestant, you have many more Protestant movements. You have the likes of the Baptists, and you also have Mennonites, and you have very varied religions that fall into the Protestant Reformation. So, out of all this came the scientific revolution. Now, up until this time, most people believed in the Aristotelian universe. Earth was the center of the universe. Now, they believed this for 2,000 years, since the time of Aristotle. The church adopted Aristotle's ideas because it placed man and the earth at the center of the universe, which is what they believed, and reinforced their ideas. Now, growth in education, arts from the Renaissance led to the scientific revolution. 1543, a Polish astronomer, Copernicus, published On the Revolution of Heavenly Spheres. He put the idea forth of a sun-centered universe. Now, this is still wrong, but it's definitely better than an earth-centered universe. 1632, Galileo's work gets him in trouble with the church. Galileo backed up a lot of what Copernicus said, created his own telescope, wrote a lot of things that contradicted the church, and he got put on trial and found guilty. He got put on house arrest. So the church was very powerful at this time. Now, out of this, you had other very famous people: Tycho Brahe, Sir Francis Sir Francis Bacon, Johann Kepler, Sir Isaac Newton, created scientific method, advanced the knowledge of the Europeans. And this started to bring into question this whole idea of the church once again, and God. And they came up with this idea of deism, which was God created all life, but does not play a role in how it operates. So the scientific revolution is going to lead up to the Enlightenment, which is actually our next topic to discuss on our next set of boards. So history's no mystery. Take good notes.